Today, if you're watching and you don't know the Lord, that is really the most important decision that you can make. It's just inviting Jesus into your heart. Listen, I want to ask you this question. If you were to die tomorrow, where would you spend eternity? Do you know the answer to that question? If you don't, then I'm just compelling you to listen to what we're talking about today and invite Jesus in. It's so simple.
Okay, brothers and sisters in the Lord. So now that the memorial service for Joni Lamb has officially taken place at Gateway Church, I think we all need to sit down and really process what yesterday actually represented. Because in my opinion, this was never just a funeral. It wasn't just a memorial service. It wasn't even just about grief. Yesterday felt like years of tension, loyalty, silence, power, forgiveness, ministry politics, and unresolved family wounds all walking into the same room at the exact same time. And honestly, I don't think anybody watching this story unfold truly understood how emotionally loaded that service was going to be until the doors actually opened and people started arriving. Because let's be real here, the public wasn't only watching to mourn Joni Lamb. People were watching to see who showed up, who spoke, who avoided each other, who got acknowledged, who got ignored, and whether any of these fractured relationships inside the Daystar world could even survive being in the same building together for a few hours. That's the part people don't want to say out loud, but I'm going to say it. There was grief in that room yesterday, absolutely. Real grief, human grief, family grief. But there was also history sitting in every chair. And as I watched everything unfold, I kept thinking about how much has changed in such a short amount of time. Because before all of this controversy exploded publicly, Joni Lamb was still seen by many people as one of the most recognizable women in Christian broadcasting. She wasn't just hosting television programs. She represented an entire era of Christian media culture. For decades, the Lamb family name carried influence, visibility, and authority in evangelical television circles. So when she passed away, this was always going to become bigger than one family's private mourning process. Now here's where things start getting complicated. Because the memorial happened at Gateway Church, and that decision alone had people talking before the service even started. A lot of people online were questioning why that venue was chosen considering all the controversy surrounding the church itself over the last year. Others were saying the choice made sense because of the relationships and ministry connections involved behind the scenes. But regardless of where people stood on it, the reality is that once Gateway was announced as the venue, the memorial instantly became more than just a farewell service. It became symbolic. It became layered. And honestly, one of the biggest things people were waiting to see yesterday was whether Jonathan Lamb would attend. Because let's not act like that wasn't one of the central emotional tensions hanging over this entire situation. And he did. That alone spoke volumes to me. Because whether people agree with Jonathan or not, whether they support his public stance or not, walking into that building yesterday could not have been easy. We're talking about years of public family division, allegations, fallout, fractured trust, employment disputes, public statements, leaked recordings, and emotional wounds that have played out online for millions of people to analyze in real time.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to take a few minutes today to speak from my heart to the Daystar family and friends. Recently, Daystar made the decision to terminate my son, Jonathan Lamb's employment. That decision was not taken lightly. It followed a 15-month review of Jonathan's performance and his refusal to take any steps to satisfy a detailed performance improvement plan put in place. He also refused my offer to participate in a formal mediation to resolve grievances in a biblical and professional manner. Rather than take any steps to improve his performance at Daystar, it seems clear now that Jonathan was focused on fabricating a smear campaign. You see, Jonathan was extremely disappointed that he was not named the future president of Daystar following the death of his father and my husband, Marcus Lamb, despite the fact that Marcus had given a clear directive to the family and to the board that I would succeed him as president. Jonathan's disappointment in not getting his way only deepened when I married Dr. Doug Weiss, who has been such a blessing to me, the rest of my family, and Daystar. I can tell you that as a mother, as a grandmother, this situation saddens me deeply, and it grieves my heart because I love my family. I love all my children. I love my grandchildren. I love the work we've done together for so many years.
Most people would have avoided that environment completely. Most people would have stayed home, but he showed up anyway. And I'm not going to lie, there's something deeply human about that. Because funerals and memorials have this way of forcing people into emotional spaces they've been avoiding for years. Suddenly, all the pride, all the tension, all the anger gets interrupted by the reality that somebody is gone forever. And yesterday felt heavy because everybody in that room knew there were conversations that probably should happen long before a memorial service ever did. Now, another thing people were paying attention to was Susie Lamb. And honestly, I think Susie has become one of the most quietly significant voices in this entire situation. Over the past few years, people have watched her speak openly about pain, exclusion, forgiveness, heartbreak, and disappointment in ways that felt emotional but still measured. So naturally, viewers were watching closely to see how she and Jonathan would be received during the service itself. And this is where things become incredibly delicate. Because funerals don't magically erase unresolved conflict. Sometimes they expose it even more. People notice body language. They notice seating arrangements. They notice who embraces who. They notice who speaks publicly and who doesn't. Every little moment gets interpreted because people know there's a larger story sitting underneath all of it. And then, of course, there's Doug Weiss, which is where this conversation becomes even more emotionally charged, depending on who you ask. Because whether supporters want to admit it or not, or critics want to exaggerate it or not, Doug's presence inside the Daystar world changed the family dynamic permanently. That's simply reality. The moment he married Joni, the conversation surrounding Daystar shifted publicly in a massive way. Some people embraced the relationship. Others questioned the timing, the optics, the fallout connected to it. And yesterday, all of those feelings were still lingering in the atmosphere whether anyone addressed them directly or not. Because while people were mourning Joni, they were also subconsciously measuring what happens next. That's the part nobody says openly, but everybody is thinking privately. What happens to the future of Daystar now? What happens to the relationships? What happens to the people whose influence, visibility, and leadership became tied to Joni over the last several years? Those questions didn't disappear yesterday just because there was a memorial happening. And honestly, I think that's part of why the internet has been so emotionally invested in this story. It's not just celebrity-style drama. It's because this situation touches faith, family, power, forgiveness, loyalty, grief, leadership, and public accountability all at once. People see pieces of their own church experiences inside this story. That's why the reactions are so intense. Now, one thing I will say is this. Regardless of where anybody stands politically, spiritually, or personally in all of this, yesterday reminded me how complicated human beings really are. Nobody in this story is one-dimensional. Nobody. Not Jonathan, not Suze, not Rachel, not Doug, not the board members, not the people online reacting to everything. Everybody involved is carrying their own version of pain, loyalty, fear, confusion, or conviction. And honestly, that's why this story has held people's attention for so long. Because underneath the headlines and the internet debates, this is still a family, a deeply fractured family, but still a family. And I think yesterday forced everyone watching to confront that reality in real time. Now, moving forward, I already know people are going to continue analyzing every detail from that memorial service. They're going to talk about who spoke, who didn't, who stood where, who interacted publicly, and what it all supposedly means for the future of Daystar and the Lamb family dynamic. The speculation is not ending anytime soon. In fact, I honestly think yesterday may have opened a completely new chapter in this story rather than closing one. But at the center of all of it is still the reality that Joni Lamb is gone. And whether people supported her, criticized her, agreed with her decisions, or questioned them, her impact on Christian television and religious broadcasting is undeniable. She helped shape an entire media institution that influenced millions of viewers over decades. That legacy, complicated or not, is still part of the story. And after watching everything unfold yesterday, I think the biggest question now is whether healing is actually possible from here, or whether the fractures inside this family and ministry world have simply gone too deep. That's the question people are really asking now. But I want to hear from y'all. Do you think yesterday's memorial changed anything emotionally between the Lamb family members? Do you think reconciliation is still possible after everything that has happened publicly? And what stood out to you the most about the service and everything surrounding it? Drop your thoughts below, because this story is far from over.